marszałku, będzie stała hostessa z mikrofonami i przekażę panu. Dobrze? To ja na razie stoję. Czy nie? O, zapraszam. Tak. Tak. Proszę uprzejmie. Pan marszałek będzie odbierał z panem dyrektorem Malickim, więc...
Dobra, jasne.
No tak w miarę dyskretnie.
Oficjalnie jest to otwarcie z panem marszałkiem Terleckim.
O 30.
Bo ja się stresuję, bo on na jakieś Ukrainę
A
poszedł.
ten do przesuwania,
Tak,
do,
od 14:30.
do przesuwania tych slajdów,
A
co ma?
już, jak nie
to
dali...
też z mikrofonem trzeba podać.
Tak.
Ile jeszcze mamy trwać? Pan poszedł na jakieś panel.
Tak, ale
Okej.
Agnieszce wysyłałam też wszystko, cały program.
Tak.
Mam jeszcze...
Proszę?
Punktualnie zaczynacie 14:30?
Tak, tak.
To już jest teraz, więc jest ich
No
więcej.
tak, no już
Tak.
widzieć. Ale pani może by z nami zaczęła. Byśmy, bo my w trójkę, tak. Trójkę otwieramy.
Ja robiłam screen Agnieszce z forum i to... No,
To, to pan będzie podawał, tak?
Tak, mikrofon i to panu powiesz, tak?
Tak, jak będziemy wystawę.
Mamo, odzwonię.
A on mi mówi, że na jakąś Ukrainę otwiera.
Dobrze, to chciał iść na Ukrainę. Nie?
Otwarcie... Tak, otwarcie forum.
Hello, you're watching TVP World
15th, March
19th.
If you take a German, today, and talk
There is much that we share. We're honored to be with you.
Tell me the secrets you hide. Whatever keeps you awake in the night. It's better losing yourself by my side than lie. Oh, why? It's like a never-ending story. It's playing in my mind. You told me you were sorry, yeah, once upon a time. But I don't wanna worry, so baby, don't be sorry. Let's just pretend this love will never end. Just like a never-ending story. It's playing in my mind. You told me you were sorry, yeah, once upon a time. But I don't wanna worry, so baby, don't be sorry. Let's just pretend this love will never end. Just like a never-ending story. It's playing in my mind. You told me you were sorry, yeah, once upon a time. But I don't wanna worry, so baby, don't be sorry. Let's just
Bądźmy razem jesienią. Telewizja Polska.
melynek fénye mindig megmutatja az utat a közös értékeink és közös cél.
Serdecznie pozdrawiam wszystkich widzów w kraju, za granicą. Patrzcie, jakie nasze hale przepiękne są. Zapraszamy turystów wszystkich, nie no z Polski, bo za granicę. Chyba już pięknych tych hali nie ma, jak tu jest Ruślowa Polana. No, pozdrawiamy całą Polskę, Warszawę szczególnie, tamte Sejmy, nie Sejmy. Zapraszamy na wycieczkę, a nie tam siedzieć, kłócić się, a tu trzeba przyjechać góry, rozluźnić głowy trochę.
Witamy Państwa z Karpacza, stolicy Karkonoszy, która przez najbliższe 3 dni będzie sercem debaty o sprawach najistotniejszych dla Europy Środkowo-Wschodniej i dla jej przyszłości. To tu w ramach 31. Forum Ekonomicznego
Eastern Central Europe, and I've got the pleasure and honor to welcome you at the 34th edition of the conference Europe of Carpathia. My name is Marta Kupińska. I represent the Polish Sejm, Polish Parliament, and the institutional partner of this event. And I will have the pleasure and honor to chair on this conference, and with Professor Maciej Szymanowski, director for an Institute of Polish-Hungarian Cooperation named after Franczak. Good morning, Madam. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Professor, we had the pleasure to work together during a conference like that, of this type, and I personally participated in it in February in Krasichin. It was the 32nd edition of this conference, Europe of Carpathian Mountains. And getting prepared for this meeting, the first reflection of mine, and not only mine, is that the context has changed so significantly, and the circumstances accompanying this event. And I believe that it will be really pronounced very soundly during the debates. Yes, we live during the time of war, which is taking place just next to the Polish border, and this war has got many faces. One which brings death and destruction and many economic consequences, which we feel, we Poland, we Europe, very high inflation, problems with access and to the cheaper energy, and this is a time of trial, of challenge for East and Central European nations. And this year's edition of Europa Karpat, Europe of Carpathia, will be focusing on these issues, on what guarantees the stability of alliances and what values, what institutions are the ones which will be given the voice first and foremost in these days, and also analytically presented the real picture of situation both in European Union, in our part of Europe, because it is the case that when the wind of history is blowing, and it is blowing not for the first time here in this area in Europe, but the wind of history is blowing, and one may construct bunkers, but sometimes we need to construct windmills, and we will speak about that. But in order to let these topics resound, this topic and other topics which will be covered in the days to come, I would like to give the floor to the two persons which will officially open the conference, and without them the conference will not take place. Mr. Marek Kuchciński, chair of the Committee on the Foreign Affairs and author and inventor of the brand Europe of Carpathia, and also Professor Jan Malicki, director of the Faculty of Eastern Europe of the University of Warsaw. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. We would like to extend a cordial welcome. This is the 34th edition of this conference, which has been is being organized under the auspices of the Sejm, of the Parliament of the Republic of Poland, and it was kept growing, and also institute named after Mr. Felczak, an institution supporting us, both Polish and foreign. And ladies and gentlemen, this conference in recent years has gained very special nature. We are focusing mainly on East and Central Europe, but we look at Europe of Carpathia and the Carpathia mountains, which are joining us, linking us, not dividing us. These are the conclusions from the most recent conferences, which renders it possible to undertake political issues to show that the mountains, although they bring difficulties in transport and different, but the mountains are linking us, are joining us together, and cooperation of our countries should be very important if the mountains are linking us. And in recent years, we clearly see very practically that in order to retain sovereignty and to think seriously about the freedom, we need to cooperate. And the neighbor will be talking to neighbor, and they can communicate much better than the huge powers both from the east and from the west, irrespective of in which part of Europe we live, and the interests are the most important for politicians. And Professor Jan Malicki represents the larger community, not only the Faculty of Eastern Europe, and the floor is given to him. Thank you very much. Thank you. I would like to raise three issues during this conference. And first, here in Poland, in our region, we need institutionalization of projects, of many important and and valid enterprises. There have been many interesting concepts, ideas, which have not lasted, unfortunately. The Europe of the Carpathians is an example. This conference is an example of success, which is possible if you are stubborn, if you put a lot of effort and patience, like Speaker Kuchciński, then the institution may emerge, which is very essential, very important on the map of all Central and Eastern Europe and Poland as well. And second issue, I would like to encourage you, because for a dozen or so years I have been patient, and I have keep coming to the Europe of the Carpathians conference, and also I became a very important person of the Europe of the Carpathians. So I would like to encourage you to be persistent and come here year by year, as long as the institution goes on, and here and in Krasicyn, because there are two scenes, both here in Karpacz and Krasicyn, and there are also other locations being considered. And the third issue I have been obliged to speak about, I am wearing two caps. I represent myself, the Carpathian Institution from Warsaw, the Faculty of Eastern Europe of the University of Warsaw, because we are reconstructing both the pre-war astronautical observatory in Czarnochora, in the mountain in Czarnochora, but we are doing that with together with the Ivano-Frankivsk University and its rector Iwon Czependa, and I also represent here Rector Igor Czependa from Ukraine, from Ivano-Frankivsk University. And beside observatory, this astronomics, we wanted to show the dignity of Europe of the Carpathians, and also we planned this conference to be held in Yaremcze, which was planned for March 2022, but the wind of history, 2021, but the wind of history blown 22, and somebody in the Kremlin thought that their geopolitical window was opening and attacked Ukraine, but I was rendered obliged by Professor Czependa, who is optimistic like I am and like we are, to declare that, and he is convinced that the conference Europe of the Carpathians will be held in Yaremcze, in Ukraine. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are planning to think about it, to plan for this conference. Also in other countries of Central Europe, we think about Slovakia, we think about Hungary, and pretty soon in Szereszfotok, there was one conference, and in Czech Republic, and in different places in Poland, both in Ukraine, in Romania, in Serbia. These are the Carpathian countries, not to mention Austria as well. But speaking about Carpathians, when we say Carpathians, we think Central Europe, and many challenges, so many challenges our generation is faced with, but our projects of ours are to render life easier for our successors, for next subsequent generations. We would like to encourage you to participate in these meetings. We are going to discuss strategic and very strong issues, also culture, art, nature, beautiful landscape of the mountains, like here. You can see the landscape of the mountains from the northern side, and together with Mr. Kuchciński, we congratulate all of you who decided to allocate the 3 days to these debates. We welcome you cordially. And meeting of politicians, scientists, and local authorities, activists in Ukraine. And there was representatives of them countries expressed solidarity with Ukraine, and principle of integrity of borders, especially in Europe, must be observed and respected by all the countries, both the largest ones and the smallest ones. Here we are in solidarity. During the conference, Jarosław Selin in Krasicin offered medals to people of culture and also Ambassador of Hungary, Mr. Meyer. I am really extremely happy that the Polish side, Polish partner, and unfortunately the Polish party more frequently than Hungary has appreciated what I was doing. And on the second day of conference, the Gortech Center presented the digital Europe of Carpathians, whose goal is to increase the recognition of
zajrzeć na
the
naszą
region,
stronę
and we are
internetową i
welcome
zapoznać się
you
wirtualnie z
to
Karpatami.
our
Można,
website.
jeżeli ktoś
You
jeszcze ma
can
okulary
get to know Carpathian
wirtualnej
Mountains
rzeczywistości,
in
to jeszcze
virtual reality.
wzmocnić swoje
You
doświadczenie
can
bycia
strengthen
tutaj
your
w
experience
Europie
of
Karpat.
being in the Europe of the Carpathians. Europe of the Carpathians means also young authors, and the digital Nel Kowalska became the laureate who presented the
Jak sam
genesis
stwierdził,
of name
że
of Carpathian
który był
Mountains.
przywódcą wioski, stwierdził, że osiedli się właśnie tam i prowadził taką
one of the first settlers was carrying on war with Biesku. Well, so the Karpat was the name of this leader. So the plenary part, presented the program of investments within the Polish deal, investments to be carried out in the Carpathians. So this was a brief summary of the Krasicin conference. Ladies and gentlemen, Europe of the Carpathians, there are very few conferences like that, very few conferences like ours devoted to the Central Europe of this genesis, and it is the topic is pretty older than the Europe of the Carpathians conferences, but the figures are really well. The Europe of the Carpathians is a conference combining different communities, both in Polish dimensions, representatives of the executive authorities and also experts, scientists, but it also introduces also dialogue and to many persons who are coming from the neighboring countries and from farer countries. It is a great success of this conference, Europe of the Carpathians, and it is of key importance. And besides the author of the idea and also Speaker Marek Kuchciński, the pathway from idea to the deed is pretty short. During one of the panels, you will be able to see the conclusions of the 33 editions of this conference, and also via Carpathia. You will see via Carpathia road, and the construction machines are there to construct the good road linking countries of the Carpathians. And human is a noun, and the noun is the people of the Europe of the Carpathians are not people who are governed by mere chances. They are entities, and they are really subjects, and they are strong persons of strong identities. And it is one of the great successes and valors and values of this conference. Look at subsequent screens, how many you will see how many persons are involved in this conference, how many persons have participated. This number of persons is increasing with the lapse of years. It is a huge success and great value and huge capacity and potential to be utilized. We present the retrospection of of photographs, of pictures from different events from recent 20 years, and this exhibition is on your right-hand side, both for television and for you. We will show you exemplary slides, and it started in 1999 with the program pretty conservative, which we named Green Carpathians, the Green Carpathians, and it covers cooperation of three countries, trans-border countries, Ukraine, Poland, and Slovakia, and then it developed until 2022, until today, and it has been developing until today. In 2022, we already had two conferences, which was already mentioned. One was moved to Krasiczyn from Jaręcze, and then Krasiczyn and Przemyśl. Ladies and gentlemen, these are exemplary slides from different panels from the 27th International Conference, Europe of the Carpathians, and here you can see a review of different events and the different meetings which took place then, and the group of countries and a group of both organizers and participants of 2029, and in Przemyśl and in Krasiczyn, beautiful venues, we were considering the strategy for the Carpathians, which we have been pronouncing for many years, which is not an easy thing, and like development of Poland and all other countries which entered European Union after 2004, Central Europe, being the member, encountered one of the major problems, which might seem pretty small, minor. The Green and the Nature 2000. The Nature 2000 resulted in the fact that our task was rendered much more difficult if the investment development is concerned, and the local authorities are suffering from that. And we are considering and thinking about different forms of cooperation. This is the Europe of the Carpathians Conference 26 in the year 2020, and on this photograph you can see one of the co-founders of Europe of the Carpathians, Professor Waldemar Paruch, and also representatives of different countries, and there in the background on the right-hand side, behind the seated persons, there is the monument of Janos Esterhazy, and here Krynica, Zdrój, the Economic Forum 2016, and then in Krynica, during a couple of years, we developed and extended the Europe of the Carpathians, and as Professor Malicki mentioned, we institutionalized the conference. Conferences became the institutional agora, institutional venue to carry on discussions, during which representatives of different institutions were signing different declarations, documents, and ministers were agreeing on the route and plan of development of roads like Via Carpathia, and not only this one, but also other things were discussed, like fast fast railway to link Warsaw with the countries of Visegrad Group, Budapest, and also other issues were discussed to continue with this fast railway project, to continue and develop. An example from 2018, when the agreement was signed concerning this fast rail. And right-hand side, the small picture, 2018, again, we were discussing and we started serious talks about axiological issues, about the future of Europe, but we got included in the discussion, serious discussion on the future of Europe with respect to values. And you can see Archbishop Marek Draszewski, and the first on the right is Archbishop Zbigniew Stankiewicz, Archbishop of Riga, and the Deputy Speaker Janos Norton-Czaj, and Jan Draus and Attila Szalai are persons who who encouraged us to carry on serious intellectual debate on identity of Europe. Jan Draus, Attila Szalai has passed away. He died recently, but he was one of the persons who inspired us to seriously include the communities of people of freedom and activists of former opposition from the past, into the discussion on the debate on the future of Europe. Representatives of governmental authorities and of other different institutions who undertook responsibilities for our respective countries. That's why in May this year, the issue of freedom emerged with respect to the war in Ukraine. We started inviting representatives of free world and free people from Russia. We call them dissidents. But the gentleman on the right-hand side, the gentleman with white hair, is one of the co-authors of the Europe of the Carpathians, Speaker Ryszard Terlecki, historian, who has been a constructor, creator of our activities on the level of Central Europe, and with Marek Pęk, we welcome both speakers. And discussions on international forum in 2013, when we discussed Krynica Memorandum of Krasiczen, and different declarations, we emphasized the need to cooperate within the Central Europe. And here you can see the route of Via Carpathia. Since the times of President Lech Kaczyński, we have been supporting this Via Carpathian project, and it will be debated today and tomorrow at the meeting of ministers of infrastructure of respective countries, and we can see the end of this construction, the conclusion of this construction. The parts of this road, which, like in Slovakia, which were questionable, and also in the Baltic states, but we can see the light in the tunnel, and it will be finalized pretty soon. And on these two slides, since recent years and until the beginning, these are the slides showing what we started with. On the right-hand side, the Green Carpathians. This is the Polish part of the Carpathians. By the end of the 20th century, people who, both from Institute of Szafur and the University of Rzeszów, and the National Park of Bieszczady and other national parks, those experts elaborated the map, which we transferred to the Ukrainian part and Slovakian part, and this was the beginning of the Green Carpathians. And on the left-hand side, you can see 7,000 or so venues of our conferences. In Yaremcze, it is a symbolic. We showed Yaremcze, but it is symbolically, because the conference was not held, could not be held because of war, of course. Przemyśl It was
2016 roku.
2016,
Po prawej
and on
stronie
the right-hand
z
side,
przyjaciółmi ze
with
Słowacji
friends from
omawiamy
Slovakia, we
sprawy,
are discussing
proszę
the
państwa,
issues
dotyczące
concerning
wspólnych wyzwań
common
i
challenges and
współpracy. Tutaj
cooperation.
mamy, proszę państwa, dyskusję na
Here you
temat
can see a
między
discussion
innymi,
of such
strategii
things like the
makroregionalnej
Carpathian
strategii
macro-regional
karpackiej,
strategy in
gdzie bardzo mocno
2017,
postawiliśmy
where we
sprawę,
were
żeby cała część Europy Środkowej
putting much stress
także miała tą
on
swoją strategię
giving
karpacką,
all
podobnie
the
jak
central
Dunajska,
regions of
Bałtycka,
Europe to have
czy
their
Alpejska.
own
To jest, proszę
strategies.
państwa, przypominam,
And
to nie
this,
jest
let me
jakaś
repeat,
ambicja,
this is
którą
not
chcielibyśmy,
just a kind of our
dorównać
ambition that we
częściom
would like
makroregionom
to catch up with
europejskim,
other
tylko to
European
jest,
macro regions.
widzimy
No,
wyraźnie,
this
że
is something
te obszary
we
Europy Środkowej,
understand is that these parts of Europe covered by those strategies, they can be used, those strategies, as instruments for better and quicker understanding and better use of resources and funds that we have, national and international European. We stressed very strongly that our challenges are just two main ones. Drinking water, the view of the Schelin Lake, some of people know, but that doesn't mean we have to accept it. And yearly floodings, these are our problems. Some years ago, we observed that for 30 years, we had annual floodings every year, especially in the mountains, where water makes much damage and loss. Billions of zlotys are lost, and the state budget has to pay for it, but it cannot. It's not big enough to repair all those losses. So we need big international programs to cope with it. Here you can see further meetings. There have been 34 such meetings, including today. The attainments of this exhibition shows what are the potentials, including intellectual potentials of this event. So I invite all of you and public authorities, people of culture, artists, to this project, because the Europe of Carpathians is such a rich and diversified pool of potentials that we can be proud of. Just let's mention two numbers. I'm quoting Professor Szymanowski. In almost all the biggest philharmonic halls on the globe, most of the pieces played have been composed by people born in Central Europe, including all composers named Strauss. And the second number, more than 70 Nobel winners come from these countries, from this region. So it's more than people of Russian or German origin. So these are facts which deserve remembering, and it's worth cooperating to enable such big personalities to be born. So now I invite you to see this exhibition. Thank you now.
Szanowni Państwo, ponownie witamy w studiu.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the studio of this conference of Europe of Carpathians. Thank you very much for this presentation. It was very brief, in fact, because it could be much more ample. But using this opportunity, I would like to give a proposal to you, to all people who cannot join us, but would like to monitor what happens in this conference today, tomorrow, and the day after. Of course, it is possible because this conference is all the time covered live on YouTube, and the Sejm, Parliament's social media, but certainly the Facebook is also, and Twitter are also covering it or live. For those who did not get the program of the conference, you can have it scanned from the QR code and open it on your devices. Now, Europe of Carpathians, you know it very well that it's been, first of all, panel discussions and debates, but it also includes other events, and one of those is just beginning. In a few minutes, we will show you a film and slides about the Polish English language TV. As you know, every country has such TV channels in English, and I'm happy that Poland also is among those countries.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
Kłaniamy się, Roxana Daniewska.
Good afternoon, Roxana Daniewska, editor of this TV, and Maciej Mikos, our moderator. The international conference, Europe of Carpathians, and the International Economic Forum are the perfect places to discuss TVP World, because our region has not been represented sufficiently on mass media, but now it is reaching a growing population of viewers who get the picture of our region in a way, shown in a way that has not been offered until recently. Our manager, Mr. Filip Styczyński, who's just joined us, will tell you a bit more about it. We've got a presentation for you, which includes some more details.
Dzień dobry.
Good afternoon. Well, TVP World covers the global events in this region of Central and Eastern Europe. All things. What is very important to us is that we need to cover important facts of Poland, of the three seas area, Ukraine, Baltic states, but also Hungary, Austria, Poland, of course, not only by the way of our Polish newsmen, but also directly from that this information should come directly from the region. That is why both the Baltic states like Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania, Ukraine, these are countries where we have our own teams of newsmen built there during as little as just 6 months, and they are there, and their task is to provide content to the international community of viewers and to comment on those events they cover from the perspective of Poland and the region. The whole content we offer on our channel comes in English, which is a pretty unique thing. In fact, there have been many different projects, initiatives meant to present our point of view, regional point of view, but they did not make anything like it. 24 hours, 7 days a week, English speaking, English language channel only. Right now, this television channel has done it. TVP World was given to English-speaking people world over. We used to have different channels like TVP Polonia, which also was addressed to listeners and viewers abroad, but because there is a lot of Polish communities outside, living outside Poland, there is a community of Polish Americans, of course, in the United States. But our target precisely was people who speak English as their native and only language. And now we are reaching those better and better. We get nice feedback from viewers in the States, in the UK, Australia, and also in Asian countries like the Philippines, India. And we can see from that feedback that it was something, this channel was something they really wanted to have, because there was a kind of an information gap. They wanted something to cover this, to fill this gap with information about the Ukrainian conflict and things like it. And people are trying they had to make some effort to get that information. They had to use international TV channels speaking in English, but they would not necessarily focused on this region of Europe well enough. And now we do it from here, from this region, and make information and news for English viewers. Now, information, publicism, opinion making, well, culture should be also added here, because our intention is not only to use information, publicism, but also culture, because Poland, and because you may say that Poland is a kind of unique because of the facts that are happening here and in the region, so meaning politically, but also culturally, we have a lot to offer to the whole world. This is some of our programs available on our channel, Morning World Today, TVP World, and Express, which focuses on developments that take place beyond the eastern NATO flank. One of the programs, this is one of the programs that attracts big audiences. The World Today and Arena is another program which is very popular on the internet, and not only on the internet, because we are also available on regular ground TV in Estonia and Lithuania. Fake the Fake is a program that unmasks the lies of the Russian propaganda. As I mentioned before, we are 24 hours on, and our programs can be watched all the time, literally. So our news, World News Tonight, exactly at 8 p.m. Are broadcast. So I encourage you to watch this main program. Now, what are our target groups? Investors, business people, experts, academics, and opinion-making people, English-speaking viewers of new TV news. But we also want to reach opinion-making groups, journalists, experts. These are our main target groups. Right now, we are available on our website, tvpworld.com, and we are also available. We are available almost world over, and we can be watched in the United States and on the cable TV, which reaches more than 2.5 million households along the eastern coast of the United States. We keep expanding our coverage and reach more and more groups. And in Baltic countries, we are available on ground TV. And we are the only English-speaking TV channel which covers events and developments in Baltic states and in Ukraine. We covered the oath ceremony of the Estonian government. Other English TV stations were not covering it at all. So we here you can see a diagram which shows. No, could we go one slide back? We have managed to reach more than 100,000 subscribers on our YouTube platform. We've done that within just a year. Slow down with the slides, please. We have been visited by how many? 19 million openings, visits to this platform. Let's proceed to a bit more dynamic part of my presentation, and let's see our promotion spots, Spot TVP World promotion spot.
watching TVP World
15th March
19.
If you take German,
today,
There is much that we share. We're honored to be with you.
Tell me.
Dziękuję za spot.
Thank you for the spot.
Czy to ma oznaczać,
Does
że
that
kończymy już w
mean
tym
that
momencie
we
prezentację
are
TVP World?
coming to the end of the TVP World presentation?
Tak, dziękujemy
Yes,
bardzo.
thank you very, very much.
Bardzo, bardzo dziękujemy. Liczymy na
Thank
współpracę.
you.
Tak, zapraszamy.
Proszę Państwa,
Ladies and
serdecznie zapraszamy
gentlemen,
oczywiście do
of course
oglądania
we
programów
invite you to this TV
telewizji
channel
i
to
oczywiście
watch it
wystawy naszej
and
retrospekcyjnej.
to see our
Natomiast
exhibition.
za chwileczkę będę miał,
But
będę miał niestety obowiązek ogłoszenia krótkiej
to
przerwy. Chciałbym
announce a short
przed tą
break
przerwą
in a minute. But
przypomnieć
before
Państwu, do
doing that,
15:40 rozpoczynamy punktualnie bardzo, bardzo ciekawym
we
panelem
will start
o
a
tożsamości
very
Europy
interesting
Środkowej,
panel
a tak
at
naprawdę o tym, czy współpracować, a może pogłębiać
3:40.
współpracę.
We will
Panel będzie poprowadzony
discuss
przez pana
the issues about cooperation here. Mr. Marek
Pani redaktor,
former Sejm deputy,
mogę ogłosić
will
przerwę.
moderate that. And now let's have a break.
Zapraszamy wszystkich po krótkiej przerwie na pierwszy panel Europy Karpat.
And please come back
Dobrego
to
dnia.
the first panel discussion.
Hello, you're watching TVP World
15th March
19.
if you take German,
today,
Dzień dobry, nazywam się Przemysław Śleszyński. Jestem profesorem w Instytucie Geografii Przestrzennego Zagospodarowania Polskiej Akademii Nauk. Jestem także członkiem Polskiego Towarzystwa Geograficznego, a jestem tutaj, żeby zaprezentować Państwu Atlas Wyszehradzki. Jest to wspólne dzieło dwóch instytucji. Instytucji Współpracy Polsko-Węgierskiej im. Wacława Felczaka i Polskiego Towarzystwa Geograficznego. Jest to dzieło, które zostało wydane na 30-lecie współpracy wyszehradzkiej, która oczywiście jest dużo dłuższa. Pamiętamy z historii, że były zjazdy wyszehradzkie. To już są setki lat. Ale ja bym chciał bardziej mówić o czasach współczesnych i sprawach wyzwań. A więc istotne dla mnie jest to, że ten temat zdobył zainteresowanie i potrafiliśmy ten atlas wydać. Atlas, tutaj wspomnę, jest wspólnym dziełem 40 kilku osób. Miałem go przyjemność wspólnie redagować z panem profesorem Czapiewskim z mojego instytutu. Atlas składa się z około 50 rozdziałów, w których prezentujemy różne zagadnienia społeczne, ekonomiczne, przyrodnicze, ale także i historyczne i geopolityczne. W tych 50 rozdziałach znajdziecie Państwo zagadnienia dotyczące uwarunkowań przyrodniczych, uwarunkowań demograficznych, uwarunkowań społecznych, kulturalnych, ekonomicznych, religijnych i różnych innych. To, co stoi przed tymi państwami, to przede wszystkim rysująca się duża możliwość jeszcze większego pogłębienia współpracy. Jesteśmy w tym miejscu kontynentu europejskiego, gdzie działo się bardzo wiele. I ja myślę, że jeśli powstają takie związki współpracy jak Grupa Wyszehradzka, to one dobrze wpisują się w to, co w tej chwili dzieje się w Unii Europejskiej, o czym mówi się, o tym, żeby te związki takie powiedzmy regionalne, obejmujące części kontynentu, żeby je wypełniać. Druga sprawa wiąże się ze sprawą bardzo aktualną i bardzo dla wszystkich dla nas dramatyczną. Mam tu na myśli oczywiście pandemię SARS-CoV-2, epidemię COVID. Otóż mówi się coraz częściej, że po pandemii, kiedy już ją zwalczymy, prawdopodobnie będą bardzo ważne takie zacieśnienia współpracy wewnątrzregionalnej. Chodzi tutaj o to, że będziemy musieli skracać łańcuchy dostaw, będziemy musieli bardziej patrzeć na rynki lokalne. Ekonomia będzie tutaj bardzo ważna. Z pewnością taką rzeczą szczególnie ważną są kwestie powiązań funkcjonalnych, opierających się na transporcie. I diagnozujemy, że ten region wciąż nie jest jeszcze dobrze skomunikowany. Są połączenia równoleżnikowe, niestety połączenia południkowe, głównie z uwagi na barierę orografyczną Karpat, nie są jeszcze do końca w pełni wykształcone. Dlatego poświęcamy kilka rozdziałów naszej monografii, na przykład takim kwestiom jak wpłynie budowa szlaku Via Carpatia, jak zmieniają się zagadnienia dostępnościowe, jak zmieniają się układy transportu i w jakim kierunku powinny ewoluować. Niewątpliwie dużym wyzwaniem są sprawy demograficzne. One w tej części Europy są bardzo ważne, dlatego że wszystkie właściwie państwa Grupy Wyszehradzkiej zmagają się z depopulacją. Niewątpliwie dużym atutem krajów wyszehradzkich jest bardzo duża różnorodność. Różnorodność ekonomiczna, demograficzna, społeczna, ale także kulturowa. I sprawom kultury i sprawom generalnie takich, powiedzmy, kwestii historyczno-sesyjnych poświęcamy kilka rozdziałów. Wierzę, że ten atlas może przyczynić się do jeszcze większego pogłębienia współpracy.
Nekünk magyaroknak nagyon fontos a népművészeti hagyományaink megőrzése és továbbadása az ifjabb generációknak. Magyarország legrangosabb folklórfesztiválja a Mesterségek ünnepe nevében üdvözletünket küldjük a világnak. Reméljük, hamarosan találkozunk.
Cześć, dokąd tu ptasz? Dla nas życie to podróż składająca się z małych kroków. Świat zmienia się szybciej niż nam się wydaje, ciągle zaskakując. My robimy energię na okrągło. Wrzucamy wyższy bieg i przyspieszamy zielony zwrot. A ty, co robisz dla Ziemi?
Hello, you're watching TVP World
15th, March
19th.
If you take German,
Today, and top
There is much that we share. We're honored to be with you.
Hello, you're watching TVP World
15th March
19th.
If you take German,
Today,
There is much that we share. We're honored to be with you.
Światło bardziej w lewo, tak, z góry, tak, dobra. Proszę o ciszę, cisza proszę.
radio z lufcikiem, ale popieram, wynalazek w dechę.
Starsi panowie, starsi panowie. Starsi panowie dwaj. Już szron na głowie, już nie to zdrowia w sercu ciągle mają.
Mnie się w twoim wieku nawet nie śniła. Wojna domowa od wielu wieków trwa.
Proszę państwa! Biało-czerwoni walczą fantastycznie z sprawcami największej sensacji chyba w historii światowego futbolu.
Szanowni Państwo, za 5 minut zaczynamy panel. Prosimy o zajmowanie miejsc.
Hello, you're watching TVP World
15th March
19th.
If you take German,
Today,
There is much that we share. We're honored to be with you.
Światło bardziej w lewo, tak, z góry, tak, dobra. Proszę o ciszę, cisza proszę.
radio z lufcikiem, ale popieram, wynalazek w dechę.
Starsi panowie. Starsi panowie dwaj. Już szron na głowie, już nie to zdrowia w sercu ciągle mają.
Mnie się w twoim wieku nawet nie śniła. Wojna domowa od wielu wieków trwa.
Proszę państwa! Biało-czerwoni walczą fantastycznie z sprawcami największej sensacji chyba w historii światowego futbolu. Habemus Papam!
Spotkanie polityków, samorządowców i naukowców w Krasiczynie odbywało się w cieniu ukraińsko-rosyjskiego kryzysu i dlatego temat bezpieczeństwa w Europie Środkowo-Wschodniej zdominował dyskusję.
Wszyscy przedstawiciele, bo 10 z 10 państw wyrażali tę solidarność z Ukrainą. Zasada nienaruszalności granic, szczególnie w Europie, musi być przestrzegana przez wszystkie państwa. Te największe i te najmniejsze. Tutaj jesteśmy solidarni.
Podczas konferencji Jarosław Sellin, wiceminister kultury i dziedzictwa narodowego, odznaczył w Krasiczynie ludzi kultury i sztuki. Wśród wyróżnionych znalazł się były ambasador Węgier w Polsce w latach 1990-95 Akos Engelmajer.
Jestem niezmiernie szczęśliwy, że strona polska i niestety strona polska częściej niż moja strona doceniała to, co ja robiłem.
W drugim dniu konferencji Rządowe Centrum GovTech zaprezentowało cyfrową Europę Karpat, której celem jest zwiększenie rozpoznawalności i atrakcyjności regionu. To wspólna inicjatywa Sejmu i rządu.
Zapraszamy serdecznie, już teraz można zajrzeć na naszą stronę internetową i zapoznać się wirtualnie z Karpatami. Można, jeżeli ktoś jeszcze ma okulary wirtualnej rzeczywistości, to jeszcze wzmocnić swoje doświadczenie bycia tutaj w Europie Karpat.
Europa Karpat to także młodzi twórcy wyróżnieni w ramach konkursu na cyfrowy komiks o legendach podkarpackich. Laureatką została młoda wrocławianka Nel Kowalska, która przedstawiła genezę powstania nazwy Bieszczady.
Jak San stwierdził, który był przywódcą wioski, stwierdził, że osiedli się właśnie tam i prowadził taką mini wojnę z Biesem, który tam te tereny zajmował.
Część plenarną Europy Karpat zakończyła prezentacja możliwości inwestycyjnych w ramach Funduszu Trójmorza oraz Programu Inwestycji Strategicznych Polskiego Ładu.
Dzień dobry Państwu, dzień dobry, witamy Państwa po przerwie. Studio konferencji Europa Karpat. I przechodzimy do sprawy zasadniczej, czyli do debaty, do panelu pierwszego, który za chwilę. Tożsamość Europy Środkowej, atrybuty i symbole, to przed nami. Panie profesorze, ja myśląc o tym panelu, przyszło mi do głowy coś takiego jak wspólnota
It came to my mind something like the community of fates and destinies, something that is shared by nations living in this part of Europe. And those who have been to many conferences, these conferences, maybe remember an essay by Milan Kundera who mentioned that. Was it a time at which the discussion started about the specific nature of this part of Europe, or does this region have its specificity? Yes, the shared fates. And look, you are born and you come to a community which is called a family. Then you operate in some regional village, urban, national community. Then you join a wider community of your nation. But in this part of Europe, it is typical that we all make a different community, which is supranational, well, you drive a short distance in your car, and suddenly you change, the cuisine changes, the folklore changes, the language changes. And, you know, in a community like that, success of one member will translate into the success of other members of the community. And the failure will cause a failure of the others. We will discuss the attributes and symbols of the region. It will be moderated by former Parliament Speaker Mr. Marek Pęk, and the panelists include Mr. Marek Kuchciński, Madam Clara Mandley, expert in international affairs of Hungary, Mr. Krzysztof Szczerski, Poland's ambassador to the United Nations, Mr. Paweł Maczala, Scientific Association personalist from Slovakia, Emanuel Zinger is the deputy, same deputy from Lithuania, Professor Jan Braus, member of the College of the National Remembrance College, Mark Jan Marski from the University of Lwów and Ukrainian University, and Franjo Topic, HKD from Sarajevo. Mr. Moderator, please take the floor. Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to this first panel discussion, which will focus on many things, but very important ones. It is the identity of Central Europe, because it's a key to anything you want to discuss in relation to this region and cooperation. In today's globalized world, Europe and European Union has a problem with identity. Many people are trying to find their place on this earth and their identity. And Central Europe seems to be pretty enigmatic concept to many people living in other countries of Europe. We tend to understand what's Western Europe, what's Eastern Europe. We know what it is, what's the history of those parts of Europe. Eastern Europe associates in Europe not quite nicely, but between these two big segments of Europe, you can find something pretty enigmatic. It's Central Europe. We often, when we talk about Central Europe, we do not have all the information that we should have. So what actually distinguishes Central Europe? What's its typical feature or features? What is its common history, experience, and all that? We will touch these questions today. Let me just mention two things. We are the area where nation is the key concept and sovereignty. The French, the Germans, they will refer to the state, and here people tend to refer to the nation, because states used to disappear for shorter and longer times, but national community has always survived in this region. So the strong sense of national identity is typical here, and the price of freedom is well appreciated here. We've paid great price for regaining our sovereignty and independence. And, you know, today's world keeps talking about some unions, unifications, federalizations, things like that. But the state as a separate state and nation, these concepts are still strong here. And now Mr. Jan Draus will be first to speak on that. 7 minutes for you, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker of the Sejm and Senate, dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we just see the continuity of European history. First, you can read in the bulletin of the Europe of Carpathians, the first part, and now I will offer you a different reflection on European identity. This panel is supposed to discuss about history and contemporary times. So my first reflection will be very synthetic, but the second and third I will speak here to you in extenso. It's printed. I will leave a copy to you. Now, when reflecting on the history of Central Europe, you must see that it was used to be three kingdoms of the Czechia, of the Hungary and Poland. After the Union of Lublin, it was the Republic of Two Nations, but there were many nations in it: Lithuanians, Ukrainians, Croatians, etc. Each of these three kingdoms had its golden age, had its regional and Europe-wide being a power in Europe. They were not only Christian, but they were also united by persons, by the rulers. But they failed. Why? They became conquered and enslaved. After World War I, hardly any of the Central European nations had its own statehood. And if they did, they were small states like Hungary, the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia. Slovakia did not exist then as a state. Anyway, I will summarize this reflection in this way. For Europe, for Central Europe, seems to share its historical community of fates and destinies, and I will keep referring to it later on. At the previous conferences, I used to claim that when these nations here, this region was have sovereignty of different states, there were many divisions, but if they lost statehood, they were united as nations. So what are the attributes of the Central European identity? Well, when you think of it, you must recall the first enslavement and the first fight for freedom. And now question is, could these efforts to win their own statehood possible without the common memory which grew from the previous experience of the states? Probably not, because this common memory of the past, this longing to the statehood, made those hearts hard and strong, and they built the national identity. And this longing to the state, to the statehood, played its role during the Romanticism. It created a paradigm of cultural nation which shaped the identity. And now, do you know that only Central European nations can be proud of such an institution as a poet, a national poet, like Poland's Adam Mickiewicz, Sandor Petöfi in Hungary, Taras Shevchenko in Ukraine, Henk Bach, Ludomir Sztur, and my Ronis, or Jonasz Maciulis, Father Maciulis, father in Lithuania. It not only kept those nations alive, but they also inspired the fight for freedom. How important attribute it was, you know, the songs, hymns, national hymns, like the Poland's national anthem, the Hungarians, God Save the Hungarians, Slovak anthem, over the Tatras, the Croatians, you are beautiful, our Heimat, our motherland. Slovenians, let all nations long live. Estonians, my native land, my joy and happiness. Latvians, God save Latvia. Lithuanians, Lithuania, my motherland. Ukrainians,
Jeszcze nie umarła Ukraina i chwała
The Ukraine is still alive, and glory to freedom. Belarusians of the early 20th century, authored by Janka Kupala. The Belarusian anthem was "Who is coming there?"
Jakie wymowne są treści tych pieśni?
How eloquent are these songs and these which became national anthems, because they speak about something.
Drodzy Państwo, a po I wojnie
And
światowej,
after World War I,
kiedy większość tych
when
narodów
most
Europy
of the
Środkowej
Central
odzyskała
European
państwowość,
nations became states,
to Europa Środkowa
then Central Europe,
na przekór łączących ją
despite all
niepodległościowych
the
tradycji,
independence
nie stała
traditions,
się organizmem
did not become a politically
Niemal
stable
każde
organism.
państwo
Almost
funkcjonowało
each
w
state
niestabilnych granicach,
operated in
utraconymi
unstable
własnymi
borders
kresami,
with
przeciwstawiającymi
remembering lands that it lost,
dla zobrazowania
taking part
ówczesnej
in
rzeczywistości.
contradictory alliances. So let's
Słowa
quote
Milana Kundery
Milan
z
Kundera
eseju pod
from his
tytułem
essay
Zasłona, który
called
w
Curtain,
narodach Europy
in which he
Środkowej
says about Central European nations as follows.
jedność nie leżała w
Unity
ich zamiarach.
was not their
Były sobie
intention.
bliskie nie z
They were
wyboru,
close
nie
not
z
by
sympatii,
choice, not by
nie ze względu na
sympathy, not by
lingwistyczną
the
wspólnotę,
similar
lecz z
languages,
powodu
but
doświadczeń,
because of
wspólnych
the
sytuacji
common
życiowych,
experience,
które je łączyły
common
w różnych
historical
okresach,
situations
w różnych
which
konfiguracjach
linked
i
them in
ruchomych,
different configurations,
nigdy nie ostatecznych
and
granic.
thanks to the moving, never
wojnie,
final state borders.
Kiedy Europa
After
Środkowa
World
znalazła
War
się
II,
pod
when Central
dominacją
Europe
sowiecką,
was under
ponownie
Soviet rule,
ożyły pragnienia
the desire, the craving for freedom
samodzielne
revived
narodowe
again.
rewolucje,
National
rewolucje,
revolutions,
strajki,
strikes,
czy
and
inne zrywy
other
wolności,
movements
chociaż były konieczne i
were
ważne,
necessary, of
gdyż
course, and
budowały
important
niepodległościowy
because they were
etos.
building the independent minds, but they failed under strong domination, and they led to mass emigration after the Prague Spring in 1968, when people were, Mr. Siwiec burned himself at the biggest sports stadium in Warsaw, holding the Polish flag and shouting, "I fight for ours and your freedom." Then Shandon Bauer in Budapest, Jan Palach in Prague. These people gave a great symbol from those people who gave it to Europe, to Central Europe. This symbol acquired a special significance when solidarity emerged in Poland, and its first Congress, they formulated a message to working people of Eastern Europe. Other organizations followed the same example. And there was a Solidarity, Polish, Czech Solidarity, Polish, Hungarian Solidarity was born. So the road of nations' solidarity against communism was successful, and it brought about the autumn of nations. And now, after 30 years of free Central Europe, when again dark clouds are overcasting sky over it, I ask you, is it possible, is it able to keep those separate independent Central European states united or not? Or it has to lose national sovereignty first and come to unity then. My third reflection now is the last one, important one. As regards the free nations of this region, Milan Kundera wrote once, how important words he wrote.
spotykały się z obcesową ignorancją
They were
ze strony wielkich,
always
a ich
ignored
istnienie
by the
jest
great
zawsze
of this
zagrożone
world,
i
and
poddawane.
their existence has always been
Albowiem ich
challenged and
istnienie
contested, because you can contest their very
jeszcze słowa Kundry.
existence. Are those grim words of Kundera in this political reality today, the reality of war in Ukraine, doesn't it agitate your imagination? Doesn't it stir your imagination when you start hearing about the re-emergence of Russian and German zones of influence and interests? Don't these things threaten Central Europe?
Czy po akcesji większości państw z Europy Środkowej do Unii Europejskiej
Does the fact of accession of these states to European Union, aren't they possibly under the politics done according to the rule divide and impera? Look, Central Europe, only the foundation of common and shared history, tradition, combined with your identity, your own identities, and good and affirming relatives with the West. Only then you can be the subject in Europe. You must not make the Brussels error, which opened doors to Russia. And this structure should include not only states which are members of the EU, but also the candidates like Ukraine, Moldova, or Georgia. And let's consider the representative of the Belarusian representative in exile. In fact, all countries of Central Europe can find their birth in Europe. And this conference refers to the conference of state leaders in the years 2016-2019, who not only recalled to the Brussels rulers about unfinished integration. Professor, we have to stop at this point because it will take the half of the time we have for the whole panel. Just 2 sentences. The consequences of the failure to understand Central Europe by the West is now experienced by us in the form of the inflation, energy crisis, and emigration. And my last sentence, when looking for historical analogies, I can say this: time has come to replace the so-called legitimism of the Entente Cordiale between Prussia, Russia, Austria, and France. France joined it later in 1918. Replace it with the rule of equality and solidarity between states and nations. This can be reached only by integrated Central Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Many thoughts. Real, presentation, well developed presentation, but the issue of Ukraine and the whole panel resounded at the very end of your speech or your presentation. This panel is carried on in a very specific situation when there is war in Ukraine, war carried out in order to let Ukraine stay within its national identity. And Ukraine has been denied its right to sovereignty by Russia. And now I would like to give the floor to representative of the University of Lviv, and from the point of view of Ukraine, Markian Malski from the University of Lviv. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very grateful for this invitation to participate in this very important meeting, and I would like to thank the organizer and also those who initiated this conference, the Europe of the Carpathians. And what's the identity of the Central Europe? It is a topic very important for Ukraine because Central Europe, as of today, is not only just cultural or institutional picture, but we speak about Central Europe as some identity, some being, economic and cultural entity. And so therefore today, the discourse which is spending on European identity, which is carried on in the whole of Ukrainian society. So the most important question is, what is the position of Ukraine in Central Europe? What is the place? What is the position of Ukraine? Because some of the politicians and diplomats perceive this as an important element, this European identity as an important element of Ukrainian identity, which Ukraine belongs culturally, religiously, and also politically. There's a part of Central Europe. Among Ukrainian politicians, there are different approaches, and there are experts who say that Central Europe is just a theoretical entity. It is some image which does not have anything in common with reality. Yes, geographically speaking, the Central Europe does not have a clearly demarked borders. So we don't have any natural border lines like mountains or rivers, but there are some similarities which join us with neighboring regions. From a geopolitical point of view, it is very important to start thinking about what was Central Europe in the year 1989. Europe has done some review, and we considered how we looked like after the Yalta Pact, and then many smaller countries emerged in Central Europe, and these nations started speaking about their own national identity. And we in Ukraine, we have got also some points of reference on how we want to utilize our Central European identity. Ukraine is a very complex entity as a country, as a state. Historically speaking, Ukraine has belonged to the Central Europe for a very long time, but Ukraine was incorporated and involved, included in some Euro-integrational processes, which makes us think in broader terms, because we speak about Central and Eastern Poland, and also thanks to Poland. So we understand that today, for Ukraine, the Central European identity is a mechanism which will allow us realize our goals and maintain our European identity, not only because of geopolitical processes, but the first and most important question is security of the region, how to defend the Ukrainian identity, how to defend sovereignty of Ukraine. Today, we look at Central Europe as some region which were extremely important geopolitical projects are being carried out. We understand perfectly well that Ukraine's participation in these projects is a foundation, political and economic foundation today, where we try to win in this cruel and war full of atrocities. We in Ukraine, we see all the advantages and disadvantages of those political projects. First and foremost, we think about the project of Ukrainian project concerning the 3 Cs ideas. What's the Ukrainian approach to this 3 Cs idea? And among the politicians within Ukraine, we understood the benefits stemming from participation in 3 Cs projects. So we want to utilize it for infrastructural projects, for transport corridors and digital corridors, not only to join eastern parts of Europe with the west, but also north with the south. And it is the topic which we have been discussing for 10 years already. It's a huge, this 3 Cs project, it's a huge geopolitical and economic project. When we speak about 3 Cs project, and of course there are different major problems, whether Ukraine is going to participate in one project or another, whether Ukraine will be or not a member of European Union. Well, we have finally gained the status of candidate country. But the Europe of the Carpathians is a tool which lets Ukraine not only, from moral or economic point of view, but also from very natural way to get to the family of European nations. So Europe of the Carpathians to a smaller extent, but it is extremely important. So lesser project. The Lublin Triangle, well, a smaller project, but also very important because it is a platform for cooperation between Ukraine and the neighboring countries. And many times during discussions within our community, we discussed the perspectives of the Visegrad community. We said that Visegrad has got tremendous possibilities because thanks to this also Visegrad Triangle, many projects, Visegrad Group, many projects can be implemented. And from the point of view of East European and Central European identity, it's very important. The Ukraine is one of the foundations of the safe and stable development of the whole of Europe. All of us understand that thanks to those initiatives, Ukraine has got a possibility to prove its European identity. And by this, we show that step by step, together with all the changes which take place, because our society has changed, the war has changed the approach of many European nations vis-à-vis Ukraine. And now Ukraine has got better and better chances to attain even more features characteristic for Central Europe. Thank you very much for your attention. Well, of course, the situation of Ukraine is really very special. You are struggling and fighting for freedom, for independence, but this theme is very interesting, mentioned by Mr. Ambassador, that every country of Central Europe has got the right to decide with full sovereignty on which projects it's going to participate, which geopolitical projects it's going to take part in, both geopolitical but also political and cultural. It's an important element of sovereignty, but from this point of view, concerning in which direction given country strives at, Hungary is very important, very interesting example. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Klara Mangiri, and I would like Ms. Mangiri to take position concerning this very important issues in respect to Ukraine. Ukraine vis-à-vis European Union. It is also a topic which is very important for us in Central Europe, because European Union is trying to impose on the countries of Central Europe the vision which is being created by the big powers, but while the other countries are treated as a second category. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Professor and Mr. Ambassador. And also thank you, Professor, for your speech. I will be speaking very briefly because a lot of important and wise things have been said already, so I will be brief. So if Central Europe is concerned, I've got to say that very frequently we make a mistake, because Central Europe, it is not just the states, it is regions, because if we were to speak about Central Europe, we need to start try to define what does it mean, Central Europe, and where is it located. Of course, we don't have a proper and correct definition, but I would like to emphasize two very interesting topics. Just for an example, I studied at the university in Budapest, named Warszawski, and we had lessons and lectures where we were trying to find the definition of Central Europe. I will give you just a few examples. Central Europe means regions which are located within the former Habsburg monarchy. It is a very important point, of course. Now I'm speaking about the regions, not about the states, because Ukraine, it is not within this definition. Only part of the Ukraine, like Subcarpathian region and also southern part of Poland, not all Poland, but it is very important, very good example of showing you problems with definition concerning Central Europe. And another issue I would like to emphasize is the role of the church. Very frequently we may read in books that the role of the church has been very important for European identity. The role of the church has been very important in the lives of people living in the Central Europe. It doesn't mean that we don't attend masses all the time. Of course, the Polish people are attending the church frequently, but religion is very important. Poland and Hungary were the first countries in this region to take Christianity. Poland and Hungary. When the Orthodox Christianity started, it started there with Orthodox Christianity, then Eastern Europe begins. So the role of the church can also be constitutive and to indicate borders between the Eastern Europe and Central Europe. If the attributes and symbols are concerned, we may say that we have got common history. It is very important because, as Mr. Draus has said, after the First War, we lived through First World War, World War II, and we struggled against communism together. And these are things which people who live in the West have never ever lived through that, like the French people, the Germans, the Western Germans didn't have such an experience like the people from the Central Europe, so they can hardly understand us. And geographical elements, like example, the Danube River and other rivers, and also this is very important element if we think about literature, for example. In literature, we may read about the elements of geography which are typical for Central Europe and architecture. Architecture, for example, in Police So in Austria and Hungary, in Czech Republic, for example, the architecture is very typical, very like the towns and cities constitute symbols of Central Europe, with their very characteristic architecture. Architecture is also a marking and something which is really important. We cannot live without architecture. So, and if Central Europe is concerned and its role, a role of the symbols, we need to encourage people to devote to think about identity of Central Europe. And from my colleague, I heard that a long time ago there was the faculty of focusing of only Central Europe, and students could study one semester in Kharkiv, one in Czech Prague, and one in Bratislava in Slovakia, and one semester in Budapest. And I suggest that it would be a very good starting point, very good idea to organize this type of studies of faculty again, just to offer the young generation a possibility to develop their knowledge about the Central Europe. Let them not only read books about history, but let them participate in Central Europe. But so I would like to encourage all the people to have this type of studies, this type of to have students so well developed, so well understanding the Central Europe. So young generation is also our future. So it's very important. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we came to the discussion about intellectual and spiritual values, and naturally, I will give the floor to Professor Franjo Topić, who is a clergyman, and I would like Franjo Topić to continue and to expand on the topic of spiritual foundations and religious foundations of Central Europe. Thank you very much.
I would prefer also to speak in Croatian, but it is not technically possible. I would prefer also to speak English or to speak Italian or German, but here is obliged to speak now English. English is already common language in all the world. I have chosen specially argument for this session, and I thank you again for the invitation. Relation between war and religion. In Ukraine, it is case because we are here in Poland, and we are neighbor. Ukraine is neighbor from Poland, and also I had have experience from our war 91 to 95, and we were often asked if the war in ex-Yugoslavia is religious. Just a few, of course, it is not possible to speak longer. And at first, maybe it's good also to remind us that in European Constitution was not mentioned religion, nor Christianity, nor God. And why? They justified so that religions are provoking the wars. Different religions are the cause of the wars. The case of Ukraine and war in Ukraine and Russia that denies. Both countries are Orthodox. Even both countries are also Slavic roots and origins. Therefore, this thesis about religious war is completely out. I must say, among many arguments, that this terrible declaration from Patriarch Kirill that is not only physical but metaphysical war. I am afraid also now from this declaration. Every person, we are here Christians, also Orthodox and Protestants, and Jesus, the first greeting after resurrection, after new world, with resurrection began new world, has said, the peace be with you. He said also that blessed are peacemakers, because they will the sons and children of God. How great is this declaration? Therefore, every person who is for the war, and every person who is against the peace is not really Christian. He is not authentic Christian. It is, I think, very important also in this relation, in this war in Ukraine. So what is also interesting, that Orthodox Ukraine is at first helped by Catholic Poland or other Protestant and Catholics countries. Then is maybe also a special case, the Chechens, Muslims. Chechens, one part of the Chechens are fighting for Russia, other for Ukraine. Also, this is also very interesting for this thesis. And what is the reason for the war? We are always asking. We can say maybe two. One is human greed, and human greed is without end, and also the power to the will, like wrote Friedrich Nietzsche. He is also from Poland. Okay, and it is also interesting to notice. We know all. Russia and Putin has over 10,000 kilometers land, the biggest land in the world. And he needs some more kilometers. It is crazy, but it is, I think, at first this will to power and to dominate the other. And it is also important for the identity of Europe and Central and East Europe. And this war is very big catastrophe. Many things will never be the same. Also, relation between Russia and Ukraine, between Russia and West, between also churches. It is normally. I think with Kirill will be very difficult to do ecumenism and dialogue. And what is also important to notice, that in the confrontation of ideas and weapons, at the end, win ideas. Our Serbs had too much weapons, but they didn't want. They didn't win. It is also good to remind. And to not take too much time, I will finish with one idea. Peace is not everything, but without peace, everything is nothing. Dziękuję.
Bardzo dziękuję księdzu profesorowi.
Rzeczywiście. Thank you very much. It is something extremely diabolic with using religion in order to defend or justify war. It is the worst evil we can encounter from the side of clergymen, of patriarchs, and we observe this during the war in Ukraine. But I would like to continue on this theme of religion, of belief, because the characteristic feature of Central Europe is also the fact that many countries and nations suppressed by communism in spite of their will, were made atheistic by force. And today, in Slovakia, we can observe revival of Christian life. And I live in Krakow, and I observe every year the huge pilgrimage to Sanctuary of Divine Mercy, which is in Łagiewniki near Krakow. It is one of the biggest pilgrimages, one of the most active religiously nations from this area. So I would like to ask you for reflection, and also Mr. Marian Suplata from Slovakia. Thank you.
Marek Kuchcinski for this kind invitation to this very important session, and also for his important and precious leadership at this conference, Europe of the Carpathians, for many years. Yes, Krakow is also one of my favorite places in the world. I regularly attend the place you mentioned, and it definitely belongs to our identity. So you come from Slovaks, are regularly there. In my memory, I have many points I would like to react to, but I definitely agree with Clara that we are not the United States of Europe, especially culturally, as Madam Moderator has mentioned, Milan Kundera, he said that Europe is the most diverse space in the most minimum space. The most diversity of minimum space. Every 200 kilometers we have separate language, separate customs, separate culture. This is something that is an enrichment. Just, Clara, to remind you that except Polish and Hungarian people or nation, the Slavic nations received Christianity already in 9th century by the mission of Saint Kirill and Methodius, who came to Grand Moravia. This is indeed the heritage my nation believes in. We have it in the constitution. So the mission of Saint Kirill and Methodius. Just to remind you, already in 9th century, the Slavic language was a part of the liturgic languages, together with the 3 other languages, which was the Greek, Latin, and the Jewish language, which was unbelievable. The other big nations, like England, France, had to wait for additional 1,000 years until the Second Vatican Council. So this is something that could be a very precious gift to our discussion about the identity of the Central Europe. But to be more practical, my previous experience or current professional background is more related to European policies. I was working in chief negotiators team during the negotiations of Slovakia into the EU, and then was working in the European Commission, in the office of the Commissioner. So for more than 20 years, I'm reflecting about these issues you raised at this session. How to be part of the leadership of Europe, not just lagging behind, because I'm certain that it has been said by your historical background, Mr. Jan Draus, and by the comments of my predecessor, there are a lot of concrete deliverables we are able to offer. I could maybe mention 2 extraordinary men which could serve an inspiration for us. You remember John Paul II, his concept of 2 lungs of Europe. He said that Europe should breathe by 2 lungs, by the western and by the eastern lung. And this is very important. So I will take the example of the western lung. To me, the inspiration is Robert Schuman, the founding father of Europe. And from the eastern lung, it's John Paul II. Both of them had a perspective of Christian heritage to have in the integrated Europe. in different ways. Robert Schuman said that democracy will be either Christian or there will be no democracy because it will sink just to anarchy or tyranny. And John Paul II said about Europe, Europe will be Christian or there will be no Europe. And this is very strong message. I think today Europe is in unprecedented crisis. We could search for the reasons why it is the case. On political level, the politicians, when adopting the Lisbon Treaty you mentioned, which completely abandoned reference to God in the preamble. I remember I was following the discussion that was by the decision of France and Belgium, Giscard d'Estaing, who was the president of and refused it to have it. Yes, but the politician assured us that the Lisbon Treaty will make the Union more able to take actions. So we should be more efficient, etc. But abundance of God was there. So that was probably start of the problem we have today. But what I see, and I'm sorry that we do not have an expert in personalism, Mr. Pavel Machale, who should be in this panel here, but for medical reasons, he apologized. But he is an expert in personalism. And we had a brief discussion about where to search the origin of this crisis. And we both spoke or agreed that without proper understanding of the fundamentals of human person, it's hardly to speak about human rights. So what is important is that the Central Europe tries to exercise a leadership by forming an intellectual platform of people who would be able to define in proper way key terms. We identified two important terms that need to be defined, which are, by Schuman, solidarity and justice. Because this is very often used on both sides, but at the same time, it's misunderstood or it's meant something else by the West and by the Central Europe, and it makes a damage. So we absolutely need to have clear definition of terms to set up a circle of intellectuals that would take a lead in discussing these issues and having clear mind on what we have in mind. And this starts with the definition of the human person. We already have perfect books on that, which is a part of contribution, intellectual contribution. So we could maybe dedicate more time in the future panels discussing about this. Thank you for your attention.
Bardzo dziękuję. Cieszę się, że pogłębiamy ten.
That we are exploring deeper into these values and the foundations of European communities. Sometimes I got the impression that Central European states are in fact implementing this Europe which was envisioned by the fathers of EU. Many of these values they used to dream of and they wrote of, like Robert Schuman did. Europe has forgotten those values. But, well, we have Mr. Manuel Zingeris from Lithuania with us. Sir, give us your 5 minutes long reflection, because the time pressure is strong and is still Mr. Ambassador Szczerski is still to speak. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for my Eastern dialect in Polish, but I'm allowed to speak Polish, aren't I? Okay. So we are here to cement, to blend what the Constitution of 3rd May wanted and what poet Mickiewicz wrote and said that Europe began on May the 3rd in 1791, and it will be built on these values. And Lithuania, 32 years of its independence, and Lithuania has, during that time, has made all it could to absorb and accept this heritage of the Union of Lublin. And Mr. Speaker here, Mr. Kuczynski, you remember that jubilee 2 years ago in Lublin, where we showed that we are together forever. Here and now, well, look, yesterday, the governments of Belarus sent us a small message, saying that the schools in Lithuania, which were open in Belarus, had to be closed because of sanitary precautions. So, you know, the historical contents they were teaching was banned as well. So we have a kind of a new wall, which we did not build it, and we need to do all we can to face the energy and economic problems. Yes, of course, but our nations do have those milestone values and set of values. They share it, and they have to defend them. Also, in Ukraine, we now have the Polish nation, number one nation, fighting now, struggling to defend the values which are now jeopardized in Ukraine. So I'm proud that I can speak Polish to you, and it is my thank you for what you have done to the 4 million refugees surviving in your homes, and the figures of General Emilia Platter and other figures, Kościuszko, they are also our figures and personalities, and they belong to this Carpathian project too. We are, each year, we demonstrate together with the Polish community in Washington every year at the Kościuszko Monument. We bring flowers there and celebrate. And now all these issues around the ongoing war in Ukraine. Western Europe must realize that we are prepared and ready to fight until success. And that small patch of Russia, the Königsberg, which is now called Kaliningrad, well, we must do something about it. We must make sure that Russian will not attack us from that enclave. You know, the Suwałki in Poland and the Lithuanian territory must be prepared for defense, because it is possible. It's very important. You know, we need to build something like the Mannerheim, Lithuania in Finland, and we should have the same in Poland and Lithuania. That would be Königsberg in German, Królewiec in Polish. Let me say this. My mother died a few days ago, aged 100. She spoke in Yiddish. All the Jews living there were murdered. My mom survived in the Stutthof death camp, not far from Gdańsk. And she said it in English, not hatred has won, but our love has won.
But our internal ties have won and our love to each other. Zrobimy to, żeby to, co powiedzieli ci ludzie, którzy przeżyli i Holocaust i przeżyli straszne.
No, these things were said by people who survived Holocaust. And now when we look at the atrocities which take place in Ukraine, we're afraid that that may happen in our country too, but we will stand up against it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, especially for the last emotional part of your speech. But we have to mention, to refer to the figure of Tadeusz Kościuszko, who was so closely linked with Kraków, my native town. He is an example of someone who has his idea of an independent fatherland, and that it is the top value, and which cannot be compromised. Nations in Central Europe have always struggled for full independence, full sovereignty with no compromise. As you know, that tradition of independence uprisings and wars, which were fought again and again by many coming generations. Now Ambassador Krzysztof Szczerski will take the floor. He's listening to our debate online. Sir, please give us your reflection now, a kind of global reflection, because you are now installed at the United Nations. So I think you will also be able to give us some contribution. Thank you very much for this invitation. Greetings to you all from New York. I'm happy that you still remember me when I am away from home. Well, a lot of important things have been said, but once we've got little time left, I will just briefly mention some things, and maybe I'll have an opportunity to elaborate on them later on. When we think about ourselves, we should sometimes look at ourselves with the eyes of other people. You know, there is an American, James Michener, American author of historical books. He wrote dozens of books on different nations and their histories. He chose Poland in this part of Europe. He wrote an excellent novel about Polish history. It's a novel fiction about Polish families as they lived throughout the whole history. And he managed to define the Polish people and other nations here. He said a Pole is someone who's born with a sword in his right hand and a brick in his left hand. The moment he stops fighting, he starts building. And that is the essence of our identity and the identity of Central Europe. We've been forced to keep fighting for our survival and for our identity, but as soon as the battles phase out, we start rebuilding our future. We are people of war. We can fight in order to be able to build our new future after that. So this is a very interesting perspective he took at the subject. But today we have to mention the war, because it will be very important for the future, of course, of this part of Europe. So I think we will have to face a huge geopolitical rearrangement, reconfiguration, because this war exposes how important Central Europe is for the global policy. You know, it's not true what some people believe, that the center of gravity, political gravity, is moving to the Far East and and Pacific. No, it's not true. It's still here in Central Europe and in the territory of the fighting Ukraine. This circumstance, it is the circumstance that makes the global politics aware of its importance. It demonstrates that this war can grow to a global war. It's globally important now, but it has not spread around the globe so far. But it will be important for the whole world. And it is also important because it showed that we were right. We were right in an objective and subjective way. We were right saying that such a reorganization has to come. This region, the countries of these regions were right. Now the question is, will such a rearrangement, reconfiguration take place? Well, it depends on what we do. We must first expand the influence and the area in which Central Europe operates. It cannot be confined just to Brussels. It's got to expand, broaden the horizons. I'm happy that President Andrzej Duda is visiting. He postponed his African visit because of the COVID pandemic, and now he is visiting Western Africa. He visited Ethiopia so far, but this is just a small example of what we should actually do. We should act globally and regionally, of course. So these conferences confirm that we must go broader with promoting the importance of Central Europe. I remember my conversations with international politicians when I tried to persuade them that it is so important. Well, now I think everyone is sure that of that importance, global importance. So this reorganization has to come, but it requires structural reforms in the world order. There are two things involved here. It will not take place until the Central Europe does not join the major actors on the globe, like the G7. Without the presence or representation of this region in such organizations, we will hardly reach such the position to play the role we should play. We should play by objective reasons and by subjective reasons, because we were right. So we must. This region has to win its structural birth in the structure of the world. The drama and heroism of Ukraine must add to the achievement of this reorganization. We have to press for it in the United Nations and elsewhere. Otherwise, the sacrifice of Ukraine would be wasted. And my last reflection, conclusions. The conclusions are that this part of Europe is a there is a concert of powers. Every new version of the world is not a reorganization, but is a concert of powers and superpowers. Today, the concert of powers just freezes the response of the world to what happens in Ukraine. as a member of the United Nations, and Russia is just freezing any action. So we must win the reorganization of the world structure. We must see the Central Europe as part of the global political game. We must be able to organize three major lines of identity, Central Europe being one of them. According to the slogan, nothing about us without us, the free ones with the free ones, and in God's name for our and your freedom. That's important. These three messages make the world politics different. They make difference. Thank you.
Bardzo dziękuję, panie ambasadorze, za tą
Thank you,
refleksję,
sir, for this lecture and reflection. No, we are behind schedule, but you know the subjects discussed here are so broad. But let Mr. Kuchciński, would you please summarize it? Yes, we agree with the opinions voiced here by the panelists. We can only add that the love for freedom is the main foundation of our cultures, that cooperation is the necessary condition for reaching and maintaining independence, etc. But this will be also discussed at 7:30 at the programmatic board of the Europa Karpatians clubs. You are all invited, and we will, at that event, we will try to make a message to world countries and nations. Thank you very much. Thank you all for this interesting debate. Thank you.
Szanowni Państwo, prosimy o chwilę cierpliwości na zmianę.
Just give us a few minutes to make to rearrange our stage here, the panel, before the second one joins us.
Za chwilę ruszamy z drugim panelem. Halo, halo? Za chwilę ruszamy z drugim panelem. Prosimy o zajmowanie miejsc. Prosimy o sprawne zajmowanie miejsc.
Hello, you're watching TVP World
15th, March
19th. If you take German,
today, and talk
There is much that we share. We're honored to be with you.
Szanowni Państwo, prosimy o zmianę miejsc, o przygotowanie sceny, o zajmowanie miejsc, o nierozchodzenie się. Dosłownie za minutę zaczynamy drugi panel.
Światło bardziej w lewo, tak, z góry, tak, dobra. Proszę o ciszę, cisza proszę.
Radio z lufcikiem, ale popieram, wynalazek w dechę.
Starsi panowie, starsi panowie. Starsi panowie dwaj. Już szron na głowie, już nie to zdrowia w sercu ciągle mają.
będzie się w swoim wieku nawet nie śniła telewizja. Wojna domowa od wielu wieków trwa.
To jest, proszę Państwa, biało-czerwoni walczą z sprawcami największej sensacji chyba w historii światowego futbolu.
Habemus Papam!
No, już? Zaraz.
Prosimy o zajmowanie miejsc. Mamy lekkie opóźnienie, dlatego nie chcemy go jeszcze bardziej potęgować.
Do której kamery się patrzymy?
Tutaj.
Do tej? Dobra.
Witamy Państwa po pierwszym panelu, bardzo inspirującym, otwierającym panelu, który pokazał, że może być udana próba stworzenia płaszczyzny intelektualnej tej części Europy i taką z pewnością jest Europa Karpat i wszystko, co się z nią wiąże. Do mnie dołączył dosłownie w ostatniej chwili pan Jerzy Kwieciński, wiceprezes zarządu Banku Pekao S.A. z doświadczeniem ministra inwestycji i rozwoju, ministra finansów, a to tylko niektóre z doświadczeń pana. Dzień dobry, panie prezesie.
Dzień dobry, witamy serdecznie.
Przyszło nam zapowiadać wspólnie drugi z paneli tego popołudnia. Medium jest informacją. To jest taka jedna z tez, które wybrzmiały w opublikowanej równo 60 lat temu książce Marszala McLuhana pod tytułem Galaktyka Gutenberga, w której wybrzmiało wiele rzeczy, ale między innymi też to, że na sposób postrzegania świata przez ludzi i podejmowania przez nich decyzji wpływa
6 years ago, and he said that the form of conveying the information influences the people more than the information itself, and so it seems that information is also the phenomenon which involves the risk of loss of confidence in information if the media broadcast is not correct. Well, it will be very nice to co-chair this panel or some of the panels here this year at this Europe and the Carpathians. And we would like to invite all of you to the panel on media, especially public media. And there's very special time of information war, which is getting intensified because of aggression of Russia against Ukraine. And this war is being experienced all over this region. And therefore, the role of cooperation is increasing. Good cooperation between our countries in the region And the role is growing of information coverage and conveying, and the role of joint projects, joint enterprises. And that's why this panel is so important, and we would like to invite Mr. Piotr Babinec, member of the Committee for Culture and the Media, the national media, an expert in this panel, and he will be moderator or chair of this panel, and he will introduce the guests. And we also would like to ask the panelists to take their seats on this at the table, at the panel table.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We will start this panel.
Media publiczne w dobie zagrożeń i
public media in times of peril and their cooperation in the heart of Europe, and parallel to the Russian aggression in brutal Russian and Moscovian attack against Ukraine, Central Europe is experiencing no ongoing information war, and the organized action of fake news and Russian action of fake news and disinformation. And public media from the countries in the heart of Europe need to develop cooperation and creating more effective structures for information exchange between Central and East European broadcasters. It can be decisive in the context of growing disinformation. The potential for effective collaboration between public media also in context of exchange and of content and joint content creation seems currently untapped despite the vast technological possibilities. What can be done to improve this situation? And I would like to invite the following panelists to participate in our panel. Mr. Mikołaj Czernotycki, head of the board of the Public Broadcasting Company of Ukraine. Mr. Czernotycki is a man who led the media in Ukraine through half years under the bombings in Kiev, and then he was carrying out evacuation to Lviv, evacuation of the media, and he is an eyewitness of the dramatic occurrences, dramatic catastrophic situations, and he is also a man who could manage the public broadcasting company in such extremely difficult situation. And Mr. Marek Solar-Lipiński, the plenipotentiary for channels on the Polish television, and also for abroad broadcasting. And also we have got Wojciech Surmak, president of the Polish Press Agency, and previously editor-in-chief of several titles of the Polish press, and also a man who was in leading positions for the Polish radio. And we will have Ms. Indra Makaraityte, head of the investigative journalism unit of Lithuanian National Television. He will be with us remotely. And Ms. Indra, Ms. Indra, welcome, madam. And she was involved in projects concerning Russian disinformation and ways of carrying on disinformation war. And we will start with the first topic, first theme. In the period of this open, brutal conflict and Moscow attacks against Ukraine, it seems that the media from Western Europe try to be distanced and they allow for Ukrainian and Russian news to be broadcasted, which exerts influence on the public in Western Europe. However, the public media in the Central Europe, the media and the people who understand the Soviet threat and they feel the Soviet breath on themselves, they try to be involved and committed to this present situation. So how should the journalists behave vis-à-vis this situation? How policy, disinformation policy, and the fact that Russia carries on war with Ukraine, but also with Europe, especially with Central Europe, also via influencing through the media on the awareness of nations and the public. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Lipiński first, Professor Lipiński. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you very much for this invitation, and on behalf of member of the Management Board, President Mateusz Matyszkowicz, I would like to greet you and apologize on his behalf that he could not participate in the panel in person. And if the topic is concerned, I witnessed many talks on the forum of the European Union of Broadcasters, both Polish television and public broadcasting company from Ukraine, from Lithuania, and many other broadcasting companies. At the beginning of war, there were attempts to balance between the news from Russia and from Ukraine, and the Western journalists tried to balance the opinions, which is a good principle, good intuition that one should listen to many truths, many audiatur et altera pars, to listen to the other party. But maybe the Russian media and Russian government are aware of the fact that this approach exists in the west of Europe, and they misuse it and abuse it. And many days after the Russian invasion, we tried to convince the people from the west of Europe to speak about Russian and Ukrainian war, about aggression of Russia against Ukraine, and finally it brought result. We think that we may speak about the life experience of people in this part of Europe who understand too well, both from current occurrences and current events, and also from history, that Russia is a country with whom you cannot play the games. One must name the things as they are, using the real terms. If we try to be 100% objective, then we need to give adequate names to phenomena, and this is what we are trying to do within the Polish television, and also broadcasters from our part of Europe are doing this in a very good way. They base it on facts rather than artificially balanced, rights and justifications, because the rights are not equal. Thank you very much. I think that it will be very interesting to all of us to get to learn on how does it look like from the perspective of the most interested people, from the Ukrainian perspective. So please, Mr. President, if you could share your reflection with us on how was it to operate under the bombs, under the heavy bombardments, to let the media continue their activities and to convey the information and the fact to support Ukrainian struggle for fight for independence, the defense against Moscow, against Russia.
Всіх вітаю. Власне, маю за честь сьогодні буду присутнім тут і хотів би розказати, як це все відбувалося. Ми, як суспільний мовник, готувалися до того, що буде подібна ситуація, буде вторгнення. Ми розробили відповідний план на декілька сценаріїв, як це можливо. Для розуміння суспільної України є телебачення, радіо, і в кожному регіоні є своя філія.
And being the public broadcasting company, we are a public company operating based on principles of regional broadcasting subdivisions. So we elaborated several activity plans, and we knew what we should do. On the 24th of February at 5 a.m. I received a phone call, and somebody told me it has started. War has started, so we knew that we had to implement the plan, and journalists were crying. Journalists didn't know and my colleague from Kharkiv, and he told us we are under bombings. We have lived through a lot, and Ukraine has got unique experience. It's going through unique experience, and the public broadcasting company combined forces with private broadcasting companies, and jointly we will sending signal to our citizens, those who worked in Kharkiv, in Suma, in Kherson, which is under occupation, they are exposed to danger, but our journalists keep working according to the rules and principles elaborated by ourselves, and they are covering information, and digital broadcasting works very well. We have got Telegram, the information channel, and 30 persons were using Telegram before the war. After the war started, more than 2 million people uses Telegram. So it is a very important information channel, because the information broadcasted by this channel is verified and true. And also it's very important to be fast enough and to inform adequately about the rocket attacks, about bombardments. And we also received wonderful help, assistance from our European colleagues. And from the very first hours of war, we received wonderful support from the European Alliance of Broadcasters, and also from our European colleagues, and everything worked perfectly well. Although I would like to add that my colleague previously told me on how we should manage the information, and because it's very important for journalists to speak about the context, because the war started not on the 24th of February, but 300 years ago, and we speak about the Russian Empire. We speak about the history of the existence of the Russian Empire. This is what we need to discuss, to talk about, to explain to the people. We know that this winter the bills for energy, for heat, for gas will be much more expensive, and the Russians say that Ukrainians are to be blamed. The blame is to be put on the Ukrainians. We need to explain that war was started by the Putin's regime, not by Ukraine, and similarly with humanitarian crisis and also food crisis. We know that hunger in Africa and many other countries resulted from the war, but Ukraine is not to be blamed for that. It is a result of activities undertaken by the Russian Empire. This example occurred in the past. We need to speak about the great hunger in Ukraine in 1933. We need to do anything possible to struggle against propaganda and fake news spread by Russian propaganda. And we know that budget of Russia today exceeds the budgets of public broadcasters in many Central and East European countries. We know that we are fighting against very powerful enemy, but we need to remember about the context. We can struggle only when we remember the context. I appeal to you, please work in field, please trust in the Ukrainian public broadcasting companies, because we verify all the information. Then we will win in this information war. Thank you very much for this relation. 300 years and the continuous threat, Russian threat, it's the horizon of 500 years. But we could cope in the past much better, but we need to cope with the Russian aggression today and in the future as well. And we would like to invite Ms. Indra Makaraitė from Lithuania to tell us on how situation looks like in Lithuania. How does the media context look like? On the one hand side, need for cooperation between the broadcasting companies in Central and Europe, and how does it look like, the danger of fake news and disinformation from the side of Russia, because Lithuania is one of the most jeopardized, most threatened countries, jeopardized by Russia. So
war actually was a big shock to the journalists, and as the panelists pointed out, that we at some point were criticized by our Western colleagues that we are not objective and we do not show or publish the position of the Russian side. And I could say that it hasn't lasted for long, and I think finally most of Western journalists understood what does it mean, Russian propaganda, and I think that their eyes opened. But I should say that actually in Lithuania we've been working as the investigative team with Russian propaganda, I think from the very beginning of our work. We as a team, we started to work 4 years ago, and our one of the goals of our work was to find out the main people behind Russian propaganda in Lithuania. And the 24th of February was only the start of the open war. And the main Russian propagandists and the network, they didn't know what to do, because in Lithuania we really had that massive support of Ukraine, and their profiles and bots and the main actors, they simply didn't know which message, with this message, to squeeze into the minds of the society. But the main work of that Russian propaganda network, they started actually long ago. What we found out, that it was 2018 when the first signal was given to the pro-Russian and pro-Kremlin groups, propaganda and disinformation groups, and they reached the highest activity last year. They started from the very beginning, then activated their forces in May. And you know that we had the riots at our parliament in August. Then the same activity exactly 1 year ago, in the beginning of September. And we journalists had the feeling that, at some point these actions and these activities and that propaganda and disinformation narratives and messages, they are synchronized, and that Kremlin really prepares something much more serious than the riots at parliament or street like protests against government, against some political decisions. Because in any democratic country, to criticize government and decisions is quite a normal thing. But they really used that. They used a narrative that we need to change all systemic political parties. We need to change absolutely the ruling of the country. We have to clean, and to remove from the scene all mainstream journalism, media and journalists. They are all, all systemic. They are all bad, and they are all, evil. And to remove from the scene even the way how to make decisions. I mean, they push very, very hard that idea of referendum, that every question should be decided by the people. It means that, and that parallel with referendums in Donetsk and Luhansk and in Crimea, it really, was very clear here in Lithuania. And, and as I told you, that from the beginning of the war, in February, they somehow, didn't know what to do. But, and we did the investigation a little bit later in May, and we checked and we analyzed all social networks, all Facebook groups. It was about 200. We really selected very, very sharply and clearly which group would, should be analyzed. And analysis shows that 100, at least 100 of out of these groups make up networks and fall into 4 blocks, and they differ, these blocks, they differ in the intensity of pro-Russian rhetoric. And all these, 100 Facebook groups and pages, they were spreading messages justifying that Russian invasion, diverting attention from attacks on civilians in Mariupol and elsewhere, and especially what was very, very special, particularly in Lithuania, that they directly attacked and they're against Ukrainian refugees coming to Lithuania. So, and yes, these 4 blocks, they are very, very well interconnected, and we detected people who are behind the scene, who are ordering who are creating these disinformation messages and narratives, and we, and we do our job further, and we look after them, and we do not stop, and we see what's happening now. Now they are working very hard on the energy prices and looking for every mistake the government makes. And I'm very sorry to say that our government and especially the Ministry of Energy, they really make mistakes, and I don't know why, but maybe they are too late to react to that energy crisis. Although we had a very calm beginning of summer. And despite the fact that they knew about the coming energy crisis, they're not prepared, or seems not to be prepared. And and these groups they are reacting. And this week we are having a new wave of protests against energy prices and against the decisions of the government, how they react to the rising energy prices. And I think that's the beginning. That's the start. What we will see, I think that a similar situation we will see in Czech Republic last weekend. And all this is, we know the sources from it comes, and we know exactly which groups, which people organizing that, and the disinformation and propaganda channels.
Dziękujemy bardzo za ten bardzo ważny głos.
Thank you very much, madam, for very important presentation and the way of analyzing the structure of disinformation action carried out by the Russian, and also the Russian organized the energy crisis and organized protests against the energy crisis in order to break the unity and solidarity and community between the countries of Central Europe, but also within individual countries. It is very important to draw attention to the situation of Latvia, because there is a very huge influence not only of Russian propaganda but the German propaganda. There is very small room left for the Latvian influence to be exerted by the media, and also it concerns Estonia. And it will be very interesting to us, because in Poland, if the public media are concerned, on the first line there is the Polish television, and also for this reason that there is some political conflict all around it, and also the Polish radio, and the least visible is the Polish press agency, but paradoxically, it has got huge possibilities to reach different media with their informational service, and we hope that the media are using the information from the Polish press agency. And how does President Wojciech Surmacz see the issues which we are talking about from the perspective of your organization? Yes, indeed. But that the role of the press agency is not to be shown, not to be visible. We provide our clients with content, but we are not the most important, but our clients are important. So we are a kind of aside. We are in the center of the media market, but we are not shown because our clients must be exposed. They use our information, and I would like to reflect on several issues which have already been said. You said that we countries of Central Europe feel very well what it means, the Russian disinformation, Russian propaganda. Mr. President Mikołaj Czarnotyski said that several hundred years of this threat result in the fact that we feel, but first and foremost, we understand this threat. We understand Russia. We understand it best of all the countries in Europe, which translates to us having within our DNA the system, early warning systems. We know when the threat approaches and how it operates and what can it result with, because we have got several hundred years of experience with Russia. In the Western countries, they call it Russophobia, that we are crazy people who try to, who see like Russian tricks everywhere, just to start with. But one thing I would like to tell you, just one tangible thing, to show you how effective Russian disinformation is and how what active measures are used by the Soviet secrets, Soviet services. And please note that at this panel, and for some time, we have been discussing a war in Ukraine, aggression of Russia against Ukraine since February 2022. But the war in Ukraine didn't start in February this year, but it started in February 2014. It has been lasting since 2014, without stop. Non-stop people are being killed there.
This is the effect of the work of Russian propaganda system. In the long term, the using of such propaganda tools affects the reality. I think that between Lithuania, Ukraine, Latvia, let me stop on Latvia for a moment. It's a special country because the Latvian media, I visited Riga quite recently, last April, I think, and I gave a presentation there on Russian disinformation, and they looked at me without being convinced that I have something interesting to say, but after all, they agreed that there are no truly 100% Latvian mass media, because Latvian media belong to Russia. The investment funds were taken off Latvian mass media were taken over by Russia during the COVID pandemic. Then the Czechs, the Slovaks, Poles, and Ukrainians understand perfectly everything. Well, and we exchange that information between us. We have no problem with identifying the Russian propaganda, but we must communicate and teach and educate our Western partners and explain to them what actually this disinformation is, because of course they know it, they've heard about it. But let me give you an example. Last May, I went to Sarajevo with the European Alliance of News Agencies. After the second Russian invasion on Ukraine, I asked to kick out the TASS agency out of that association. So they had an extraordinary meeting, 32 agencies were represented. There was a voting, and it might have seemed that it was just clear the Bucha massacre and other atrocities of war. And 13 agencies were in favor of kicking it out, and the rest were against. So I was shocked. And then there was a second voting, and it turned out that the TASS agency was eventually suspended as a member of the association, but not ruled out, not kicked out. What was the problem? Look, then the meeting ends, we go to dinner, a more unofficial atmosphere and relations. I will not mention any names of the agencies, but one of the biggest news agencies in Europe was dining together with me at the table, and she says, look, can you explain me what is the problem in Ukraine? Why are they defending themselves so strongly? Why do they defend their country, those Ukrainians? Well, it took me some time, and his friend from Portugal joined him, and some other people joined us, and I was explaining word by word, historical facts by historical fact. A long story it was, and after that dinner, they nodded their heads, and the first man, the chap, he asks me later on while we walked. He says, "Look, another question. Do not feel offended. But is Auschwitz in Poland?" You know, it was head of one of the biggest news agencies in Europe. He did not know where the Auschwitz death camp is or was. Well, so let's stop talking that. Just come over to Poland. I'll show it to you because it's still there. It's the museum there. You will see whether it was Polish or German or whatever. And he did. He did come over. My agency paid for his visit to Poland, to Kraków, to nearby Auschwitz. He did quite a lot of sightseeing, 2 days, and when he came back, he said, well, I have no more questions. I will never forget what I've seen there. But that's what happens. Those people know nothing. They need to be enlightened. They need to be educated. You may find it difficult to imagine, but they don't know. So we must spread that knowledge to them. Now we have lodged a new motion to kick out TASS out of the association. At the first meeting, TASS had the right to defend, and somebody from TASS had a speech. It was in May, and since that time we are now trying to decipher his lies he put in his 10 minutes speech. 4 months. We have to check things and find out which word is a lie in it and which was not. Because we want to demonstrate quite clearly, demonstrate to those other members how many lies he gave them in his just 10 minutes speech to defend his TASS agency. So we are together with the Croats, the Romanians, and the agencies there, and countries of the former communist bloc are full aware of what is actually happening. But those in the West do not. Thank you very much. I remember holy service at Krosno. A priest who was celebrating the Mass, he said, Russia lied, Russia is lying, and Russia will always lie. We know it very well here in this part of Europe. As you say, others, some others, I mean the journalists in the West, they badly need real education. Let's understand that the Russians, in other areas like energy, you know, Chancellor Schröder, who then got a job from Gazprom, they do the same on the mass media market. They just buy heads of press agencies. They just buy them for money, in the same way as they bought Schröder. Okay, so let's proceed to what is happening and what has to be done apart from educating people in the West. What can be done in the Central Europe to increase and improve cooperation and to know each other better and to be more efficient in defending ourselves against any invaders. Central European mass media used to take lessons and trying to copy Western media, but in the past they did so. But we have Heart of Europe, a TV festival. That was an idea of the new Polish TV boss, Mr. Matuszkiewicz, or the TVP World, the TV English-speaking TV, and cooperation between Poland and Lithuania. You know, many Polish TV channels are widely available to Lithuanian audiences. So, Mr. Solon Lipiński, would you please tell us a bit more about what can be done to consolidate Central European nations and mass media? Just to the same situation we have in the European Union of broadcasters. You know, the same happened to the same story as with the TASS story you told us, and the situation in Belarus. You know, it took us months to explain to Western European people what was happening in Belarus. We showed them examples of journalists who were behind bars in Belarus. How and several months after the conflict in Belarus, one of my interlocutors asked, "Hey, is there anything still happening there?" Really? So I was shocked, you know. It was in Geneva, behind many mountains and valleys and rivers. They seem to be completely unaware of what's happening in Europe. So, well, first the TVP World project. It was launched when the crisis on the Polish-Belarusian border broke out, and it started a regular Polish TV English language channel. This channel was not only to inform about Poland. Its mission is to show to the world, to the English-speaking world, what this region of Europe is like and what happens here. Of course, the war in Ukraine is the main focus of that channel today, but we go beyond this narrow region. We go to the Visegrad countries, we go to this channel reaches the Baltic republics, and it becomes a genuine, reliable source of information about the developments here. Because this region of Europe, Central Europe, is not very well understood and recognized by people in other world regions. So we're trying to distribute this channel anywhere we can. It is now available on the ground TV in Lithuania, Estonia. We are now trying to do the same in Latvia and in the United States and UK, and we hope it will soon be available in really vast areas and many countries. Today, when we remember that this traditional TV is no longer the main source of information in the world, so we also do make our programs and broadcast them online via the internet, just like in Ukraine, for example. And we want to keep developing this channel because this is part of a cooperation between mass media in our countries. They use information from this channel, and this channel gets information from the Ukrainian information sources, and we cooperate in terms of information sources with other broadcasters, especially those in the Baltic states and the Visegrad countries. So this project keeps developing, and I think it will grow. So that is one way of intensifying cooperation and integration. Now, Belsat, it is an important channel of the Polish TV. It used to speak Belarusian so far, but quite recently it started to use Russian and Ukrainian languages too. And Belsat, since the crisis on the Belarusian border, which is August last year, this channel gathered huge audiences, especially on the YouTube. And it's now one of the most dynamically developing channels in YouTube. And it is also produced by journalists and mass media from the neighboring countries. By the time of the war outbreak, we also used our studio in Kiev. It was Ukrainian public TV studio, and we could use it at that time. So that's about news. But we also believe that there is a great potential for more cooperation in the exchange of programs and joint productions, documentaries, serials, and that's how we had this idea of the Heart of Europe Festival. The first one was held last year. This year we are now preparing the next issue. We plan it for the middle of November. Broadcasters, public broadcasters from 14 Central European countries are invited to it. You know, Baltic states, Ukraine, Visegrad countries, and some of the Balkan states, Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, Slovenia, and Croatia. The Slovenians will probably say, well, they are not Balkan states. I mean, former Yugoslav countries and other countries in the south of Europe. This festival will include production serials and documentaries from other public televisions. In 6 categories, we have a jury made of representatives of those broadcasters. The best productions will be awarded. So we now see an intensifying exchange of programs. There are more applications to buy our licenses. And we, as the Polish TV, have bought the license for several titles presented at the festival. I know that there is such an exchange of programs among the broadcasters. The next thing we're going to do is to expand the festival by adding to it a co-production forum to which we have invited producers from TV producers from Central European countries, and the best such programs will be awarded in Warsaw. We invited all the public broadcasters to this forum, to that forum, and I hope that more new projects, not only news projects, but other categories, perhaps some entertainment, will also be developed thanks to that festival. And of course, that's not all. It's not all projects we are carrying out. Somebody mentioned here about the TVP World is available in Lithuania, but there are 6 channels of Polish TV available there, apart from the English-speaking one. There are channels for people living in big cities, and then Bielsat is also can be watched in Lithuania, because there is a Russian minority there. We have the TVP Vilnius, dedicated to Polish nationals living there. We have the Polonia TV, a general main channel dedicated to Polish expatriates. And we also have a channel which includes historical titles and more entertaining productions and programs. So I'm sure we are reaching the Poles in Lithuania and Lithuanians with our production. Because we must remember that in Baltic states and elsewhere, the Russian mass media were playing a very strong role in those countries until recently. So the Polish and English language channels will perhaps counterbalance it and will fill the gaps in the Baltic media markets. Thank you. Once we've been mentioning Lithuania so many times now, I think we still are in contact with our Lithuanian guest. If you are still there, Madam, would you tell us what is the Lithuanian perspective for that? And what are the institutional and other ways of cooperation between public media in Central Europe?
Thank you for interesting discussion, because actually our Ukrainian colleagues usually they keep saying to us that we are fighting with Russians, physically, but you have your own fight with Russian propaganda and disinformation in your countries. And yes, Mr. Lipinski, you pointed a good problem that our Polish and Russian minorities were under Russian influence, Kremlin influence, for many years, and especially, this is like it's a strange thing, because then during all the protests of pro-Kremlin and pro-Russian groups, and even from the 24th of February, we our Polish political leaders, they couldn't, clarify their position towards the war. And it seemed that they had doubts about the war and who started the war and what Russia is doing. So that's not about Russian minority, but especially about Polish political leaders, not about the minority itself. And as a journalist, I'm a journalist. I'm working as a journalist for more than 20 years, and I should say that now what is the main thing Kremlin and Russia wants to do in our societies is, to make the society distrust mainstream media and journalists. They say, do not trust media, do not trust journalists because they, as always, say lies. Go to the social networks, watch our channels, always alternative informational channels, and we are seeing the truth. And last year, for example, in Lithuania, the distrust in media during all these protests and attacks on media and journalists, the distrust in media reached the record numbers, and now it's stable, much more or less stable. But the numbers are terribly low, and I think what we need to do is, somehow to make the process of media going into the social network much more faster than it's happening now, because what they do at Russian propaganda groups, they really occupy that platform, and our mainstream media is not that lucky there and not that successful there. And they are gaining, and this is one problem. Another problem is that we have lots of problems in media literacy, and I'm not saying that all Lithuanian media is good. No, we have problems in our circle as well. But I feel. I have kids, and I see how they read in media, how their friends use media, and how they use social networks and information they get from there. And but as a journalist, I should say that this is not. For us, this period of time is very productive and very successful in cooperation with, especially in our region. For example, last year, then we produced the documentary about the riots at our parliament, Inside the Riot. It's called Latvian Public Television. They also screened our documentary to the viewers, and it was very successful. They also offered our documentary to other public broadcasters, but I think that, it's too Lithuanian, too Baltic for other regional partners to show to their reader, to their audience, because we were talking about the cooperation of these pro-Kremlin and pro-Russian groups in the Baltic states. And what I would like to stress once more that, we are now continuing our cooperation with Latvian, Estonian, and Polish colleagues and investigating Russian narratives and propaganda and disinformation groups in a broader context. What we did in Lithuania, now we are doing in the region. And the only problem we have that we probably detected all the agents of that Russian propaganda. The only problem we have is that we cannot find the source of financing them. And this is maybe a good thing to know that they are not very rich, because in Lithuania they are really very poor, and they work on their fanatism and on their attachment to the idea more. But this is not, probably the rule in other countries. So, but up until now, we've been not very successful in detecting the financial support for these groups. So I think that deeper cooperation is what we need now.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Well, we are slowly coming to the end of our panel, but Mr. Czarnotycki, would you please answer two questions? One is, the situation in Ukraine, as it changes the mass media, the oligarchs flee from mass media. It disrupts perhaps the work of the Ukrainian media, but at the same time, it opens certain spaces for them to move in, and maybe this is the way to improve cooperation between them and Polish and Lithuanian journalists. And the second thing is, what kind of support mass media people could offer to Ukraine, which kind of support would be most effective for them?
Дякую за питання. Так, саме це правда. В Україні одна з великих
Yes, that is true. One of the big media groups in Ukraine ceased to exist, and the oligarchs had to face down the operations. But that is just good for the Ukrainian mass media, and it's good for all the industrial market. Because they were never a true business. It was always a tool of political influence, either to as support to decisions of certain kind. They were just private groups controlled by the oligarchs. So as soon as that stops, it's good for the media industry. It is possible also that when a good support is given, well, it might be, maybe that would give some new opportunities to the broadcasters. So far, the Ukrainian economy is under very strong pressure. Of course, Ukraine has lots of talented ingenious people who can do fantastic things even during the war time. And so it is in other countries, Poland, the Czech Republic, Georgia. So why don't we join hands and forces and perhaps establish some foundation that could fund Ukrainian or Georgian productions, content from those countries, just to show the old Europe what actually goes on. Of course, we understand that this visual content is not only expands the volume of information that comes to the audience, but it also explains the reasons why things happen. And I believe that this is just a good way to follow, good way to go, to join forces, so that the public broadcasters support those in Ukraine. That could change the Ukrainian media market. So we are open to dialogue. We will do all we can to offer maximum support and to show the best examples to follow for all broadcasters, public broadcasters.
Cóż, jak można było podsumować? Myślę, że środowiska
Well,
medialne, mediów
I
publicznych z
think
Europy Środkowej muszą
the
edukować swoich kolegów
mass
z Europy
media
Zachodniej.
in Central Europe
Z drugiej
should
strony
first
ściśle
educate
ze
their
sobą
Western
współpracować,
colleagues,
tworzyć wspólnotę
second,
mediów
closely
publicznych w Europie
cooperate
Środkowej,
among them here
aby
in
nawzajem
Central
się
Europe,
lepiej poznawać, aby skuteczniej
to be
się
more
bronić przed
efficient
rosyjską
and
dezinformacją,
defend
a
ourselves
także
better
przyczynić się
against Russian
do skutecznej
disinformation
obrony
and
Ukrainy i
to
obrony
strengthen
wszystkich
Ukrainian
naszych państw i
defense
narodów Europy
and the defense of all
Środkowo-Wschodniej i
Central
Środkowej
European
właśnie
nations
przed moskiewską
against
agresją. No i
Moscow's
życzymy oczywiście
aggression. And we
zwycięstwa
wish you, the Ukraine, a victory, and we wish Ukrainian public media a nice development in the direction you described. Thank you very much, Indra Kalaitite. We greet Lithuania. Thank you for your participation. Marko Solno-Lipiński, thank you very much. Mr. Surmacz, thank you very much. And our special thanks go to Mykola Czarnotycki, and we wish you a success. Thank you.
I my również dziękujemy.
Please have our thanks too. This was the second and last panel today. Meanwhile, Mr. Markian Marski joined me. Welcome, sir. You took part in the first panel, the opening panel. You are a professor at the Lvov University. You are specialized in international relations. So, Professor, we've had two very elaborate contributions here, one about the identity of Central Europe, and second about the mass public media, including the mass media of the both parts of Europe. What grabbed me especially is that, well, we keep saying war, conflict, aggression, but on the other hand, there is a counterbalance to it. We mentioned cooperation, stronger, closer cooperation, and joint initiatives. Europe of Carpathians, the Three Seas area, the Lublin Triangle. So once, paradoxically, there is some evil from which paradoxically we can draw some good. What would be your reflection on that? Yes, that is right. I agree. You know that various threats coming from outside strengthen our cooperation. And this important panel on identity of Central Europe, it shows that we are living in a very dynamic world where new international order is coming to birth. In different continents, in the regions, and there are some sub-regional institutions being born, new geopolitical and geoeconomic structures emerge, and this Russian invasion and the Ukrainian struggle against it, and the Ukrainian strive for joining the European countries. All that was seen in this panel, because these are the main feature of this identity. Of course, we would have a lot of questions to ask about this region. You know, the people of hardly any citizen of Warsaw, Budapest, or whatever will say, I am a citizen of Central Europe. But these currents, these geopolitical currents that we see now, these threats to all EU and world, testifies to the fact that we are moving in the right direction. I said that during my panel, that it is important that the Central European identity is not only is not only part of our life, but for Ukraine is the tool to reach two ends, two purposes: to fight against the enemy and to join the EU. And this last panel on public media also shows that we have something quite original in the Central European mass media, because we understand that the war that is going on now is also an information war, and we hope that, and we expect that, as the panelists said, we want truth to be available to people living in, not only to people in Central Europe. The public media in Central Europe must educate their Western colleagues to respond to disinformation, to react to it, apart from the sources of information and other types of channels along which this information is distributed. There is more to it. Many Ukrainian media people are now fighting at the front line, and their information should be passed on to Western countries, because that region wins, that country wins, which take control over people's minds. Well, thank you very much. Let's be optimistic and let's keep working, and that would be our message for the world after this first day of our panels, because our agenda for today has been done. But before I say goodbye to you, I invite you to the second day tomorrow of the 34th Conference European of Carpathians. We start 11:10 with the panel on the food security as the foundation of European and global order. So I invite you very much, 11:10 tomorrow here, at the same place here. We will also offer you online coverage. Now have a good time. Good night.
Cześć, dokąd tu ptasz? Dla nas życie to podróż składająca się z małych kroków. Świat zmienia się szybciej niż nam się wydaje, ciągle zaskakując. My robimy energię na okrągło. Wrzucamy wyższy bieg i przyspieszamy zielony zwrot. A ty, co robisz dla Ziemi?
You're watching TVP World.
15th, March
19th.
If you take German,
today, doing and talk about
There is much that we share. We're honored to be with you.